Today joining us, we have former Clemson offensive lineman and current analyst for the ACC Network, Mac Lain. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm just living the dream. Thank you for having me today, Matson.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously there's a lot of talk about your career, what you're doing now, maybe some ACC analyzing. But before we start, I'd like to back it all the way up to high school and your recruiting process. And so coming out of high school, cornerrivals.com, you were the 59th overall prospect. You're a four-star tight end out of North Carolina, and you had many great offers. You know, at the time, Auburn and Arkansas were top teams. You had offers from them. You had offers from in-state schools like UNC and Duke, and obviously Clemson. So what led you to decide to commit to Clemson over those other schools?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I was actually committed to the University of Tennessee for quite some time. So I grew up in the Knoxville area. My mother went there. A ton of my family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all went to Tennessee. And just growing up, I always wanted to play for the Vols. I wanted to be a volunteer. I wanted to be Jason Witten and play in one of the greatest stadiums that is college football. Run through the T. All those different things, and was committed there. And then they actually fired Philip Fulmer, and that was just something that was strange to me. We didn't understand why, of course, as a student athlete, and then they bring in Lane Kiffin, and obviously he is much different than Coach Philip Fulmer, and especially back then, he was, I don't think, ready to lead a college football program by any stretch of the imagination. But it's been kind of interesting to see his journey. So when all of that kind of went down, we decided to take a step back and to decommit and kind of reevaluate what we wanted and where we wanted to go, and understand that, you're not necessarily committing to a coaching staff or to a head coach. And at that time, my father was back in the military. We lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So it wasn't even really an easy drive. I mean, it was like 6-7 hours to even get to Knoxville from where we were. So it was time to take a step back. And so we really looked, across the East Coast, teams like Penn State, Ohio State. Duke was actually super interesting to me just because of Cutcliffe and his ties with Tennessee. And obviously the school that's there. Tennessee still in the running with now Derek Dooley, then Alabama, Auburn, and then Clemson really wasn't even on the radar. But a guy named Dan Brooks, who was a defensive lineman coach, great defensive lineman coach at Tennessee, we had developed a relationship, and we actually had known each other for quite some time. I had been going to Tennessee football camp since, I could walk. I was always going to those camps. So gradually you know the coaches and you get to know who they are. So we had a relationship there. So he kind of hears that I'm out on this recruiting tour and that I decommitted from Tennessee. And he calls me up and says, "Hey, look, I hear you're in Auburn. I'm at Clemson now." And I was just like, Clemson, like, I don't even know where that is, man. And you guys have to think it was totally different than what it is now. I mean, the branding of Clemson, the Paul, just the fact that they are a new blood in college football, that wasn't the case when I was being recruited. And so, we're just like, man, I'm not interested in going there. I'm going to play in the SEC. I've grown up in this conference. That's just what I really want to do. And he was like, well, it would be great to see you. Just come by and take a little unofficial visit. So I talked with my family, and we're like, man, it would be so good to see Coach Brooks. Let's just go see him. Who cares about Clemson? Who cares about the school? I'm just going to see him. And man, so we're doing some research on the way. I'm using like my mom's, I don't even remember what phone it was. It wasn't an iPhone, but I'm looking them up. I'm trying to figure out what Clemson is. I see they have this, orange paw, and their colors are purple, orange, and white. And they have this, new head coach who, he's probably not even going to be there. He's never even been a coordinator. This guy, Dabo Swinney. So it was just to see, Coach Brooks. And man, we pull off of 85 and I start seeing paw prints on the road, and it was sunset, and it's purple and orange sky. I'm like, that gum, like, this is a pretty cool place. And it was just, Clemson was so different from any other school that I had been to, a little bit more similar to Auburn, but obviously much smaller. It wasn't, surrounded by interstates. It wasn't in this major big city. It's just this little old town. And we're coming around Perimeter Road, and then a stadium just erupts out of the trees. And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it, thinking about this first time seeing it. It was just very different. And then on top of all of that, the wow factor that I've already been blasted with, I get to meet the people, and I get to meet the athletes that are there, the student athletes, the football players. I get to meet the staff, and it was just different, man. And I know a lot of people try to sell that now, but Clemson, it's just who they are. It's who they are in their DNA, that it is a family atmosphere. They care about you off the field before they care about you on the field. They want to develop you and serve your heart and not just your talent. And that was so evident to me coming off this big road trip, seeing all these other programs that were great and really cool, but there was just something different. And of course, Dabo Swinney, being a great recruiter that he is and an even better man, it was really an easy decision for me.
Yeah, definitely. I obviously it's hard to relate, football to school. But when I was going through my decision process where I want to go to college, it was just like you said with Clemson, just everyone felt like a family. They weren't just people; it was a family. They truly care who you are and what you want to do. So I definitely can see what it is about Clemson. There's, I like to say there's something in these hills. So
no doubt, that's right.
But like I said, when you played offensive line for Clemson, but you came as tight end but then you made the transition to O-line because of some injuries. But how that whole idea arise, and what were your initial thoughts? Like, were you confused? 'Cause like you mentioned, you want to be the next Jason Wynn, but Jason Wynn didn't play offensive guard; he played tight end. So
that's right.
So, what were your thoughts about it when it first happened, and how did the idea arise?
Yeah, so it's interesting enough. I wasn't the fastest burner tight end. Obviously a bigger tight end as well. Really in high school, that's what a lot of people had told me. They're like, "Man, look, you're going to play offensive line." My offensive line coach in high school was always like, "Man, just come over, just start eating a lot more, gain some weight, come play." And I wanted to be a tight end. I loved it. I have massive hands. I love catching the football. I think I block well enough at that time to really be a difference maker. And so I go through my redshirt freshman year, and I just start lifting weights at a whole new level. I mean, I had a pretty good program in high school, but it's just so different when you get to the college rank, and the nutrition that's available, the constant lifting right at your fingertips, the coaching, all these different things. And so I'm putting on weight very easily, and it's not bad weight. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life. So I came in about 250, and at the end of that year, I was about 265 and just rocked up really, really strong, making some headway. And then we get into fall camp. And this particular year, I guess this was 2012, that LSU game, that year, we were just pretty thin at offensive line already. And in camp, we had a couple of guys go down very quickly, at the point where we're putting like, walk-ons in, and nothing against walk-ons. I love them, and they have a very special place in my heart, but it's a little bit different than having a scholarship guy out there, having a highly touted ranked guy out there. And so I just noticed this and knew I was already gaining weight very easily, was gaining muscle, getting way stronger very easily. And I talked to a couple of my teammates and my roommates and said, what do you guys think about this? And of course, by the way, they're offensive linemen. So they're like, yeah, do it, man. Let's go. And, so I talked to my parents, I talked to, the coaching staff, and Coach Swinney also, he knew how important it was to me to play tight end. And, he wanted it to be completely my decision. He said, "Hey, look, whether you play tight end for us or offensive line, I know you're going to help this team. You're going to be a great leader for us. So whatever you want to do, we support." And, you don't have to make the decision now. You're doing great for us where you are, but if you want to make that decision, we'll help you, and we'll get you, ready to roll. And so about a week went by, and I just said, let's do it. Well, let's make this change. And really I ended at left guard, my senior year and a little bit of my junior year. But, for those 2.5 years, I played every position on the offensive line and tried to learn as much as I can, which was actually really tough, going and playing a position that I had never played, all five, that I had never played in my entire life, at least at that high level. And now it's the highest level. And I'm going against Vic Beasley, Corey Crawford, Grady Jarrett, DJ Reader, just these monsters, eventually Christian Wilkins, that go on to dominate and be, the highest paid players in the NFL at their respective positions. It wasn't easy. And so it took a lot. And I'm just so thankful for, my teammates, my coaching staff for helping me make that transition and to really just, make sure that it fit. And ultimately, my senior year being all ACC, being named strength All-American, being named, to ESPN's all bowl teams, all these different things was, just really cool. And it just made it all kind of worth it.
Yeah, no, that's great. You mentioned Grady Jarrett. He's a big boy, so he's hard.
He's a
He's tough to
dog,
go
man.
against. He's great.
He's actually not a big boy. He's kind of short,
Oh,
but
really?
he's
Yeah.
very strong
On the
and rocked up, man. So that actually makes it way tougher to block him because he's so small. He has that leverage on you. You can't get a hold of him.
Yeah, he's on the Falcons. He's got that big contract too,
That's
so
right.
it's great to see right there. But when in high school, you were in a run heavy offense. So as a tight end, when you were playing there, obviously when you're tight, you're not blocking, defensive line. You're not blocking Grady Jarrett's and Vic Beasleys of the world at tight end. But did that in any way help make the transition to O line any easier? Like, did you know any blocking techniques like previously from being a tight end?
Yeah, I think it definitely made it a little bit easier for me, being more of a blocking tight end. I wasn't like a Jordan Leggett or a Stanton Seconder or a Davis Allen, those smaller, shifty tight ends. I couldn't imagine those guys trying to put on weight and then transition, kind of to that position. So for sure, certainly with all that in mind, I think it definitely helped propel me quicker, just to understand angles, blocking techniques, like you mentioned, hand placement, just how important all of that stuff really is, to make a smoother transition to the offensive line.
Definitely. And so going back to like the recruiting phrase, I was reading an article from Bleacher Report, and it mentioned that one of the reasons why you came to Clemson was because you wanted to help establish a winning culture, a culture that expects to win. And obviously, I think that happened since you graduated. They've gone to college football playoffs every single year since then, and they have that they're becoming a dynasty right now. And so, why was it so important to you though to make sure that they establish that expectation? Because many people come in, they want to win while they're there, but they don't really care once they leave. So why was it so important to make sure it sticks for you?
Yeah, I think it certainly was the way that I was raised, and just my, father being in the military, just leaving a place better than when you found it. And something that was really important to me and that I saw in Clemson was the fact that we could make a difference. And the class that we were gathering, that 2011 class, just loaded with stars and studs. I knew that we could do that. And I knew that we could make such a huge impact on a university like Clemson, and take them, they've been there once, 1981, but let's get there and stay there. Let's get to this certain level and make it a routine thing to where, like you just said, we're talking about every single year Clemson is in the college football playoff, and every other year it seems like playing for a national championship. So if I'd sat here and told you that was my goal, that was my expectation, I'd be lying. I mean, that's it. It's so crazy just to think about where Coach Swinney and former players like myself and current guys now have been able to get this program to unbelievable heights. So it was just something, I'm not sure, man. Outside of how I was being raised and just knowing that I wanted to always be able to look back and say, hey, we did that, we started that, and that's certainly the case.
Definitely, definitely. But now transitioning to your college career, you're able to get your first start against Syracuse in 2014, and it was a victory where you guys ended up winning 16-6. Packed stadium in Death Valley. But what was that entire atmosphere like? What was that entire experience like for you?
Yeah, it was cool, man. Just to finally, get that, just kind of, I don't know, ability to be a starter, to have that opportunity, something you work for so hard and so long, and there's different things. You start on special teams, or you're the first, tight end in a particular package, and so I'd obviously done all of that and played a ton of snaps, but
Hmm.
to be the first people to run out there, it meant a lot, and it was such a fun game. Obviously, we were winning that game against Syracuse, and what we were able to do that day, a ton of family in the stands, and just a packed environment, as it always is.
Yeah,
Certainly a fun thing to remember.
definitely. How electrifying is it to run down that hill right into the stadium? What was that like?
It's the best, man. I remember the first time ever against Troy, 2011, and us just kind of coming around that hill, and it's a noon kickoff, hotter than Hades out there, and just packed. I mean, so many people, even the corners, and that's when you can really tell when
Mhm.
you come around and you see people in both of those or all four of those corners just packed out. It's going to be a great game. And man, I got off that bus, and just you hear the roars and the screams, and it's just 81,000 of your best friends hanging out in a stadium ready to have a great day. But, really standing on top of that hill, touching that rock where just so many great players, great men have stood and touched that rock. It's super humbling, and it's incredible to be a part of. And man, when you're standing on top of that hill, it really feels like you're standing on top of the world.
Definitely. And do you always get that same like experience every time you go down there? Every game it just gives you chills. Do it?
Oh yeah, I mean it's always rocking in the valley, even if it's a lower attended game. I mean you're still talking about 80,000 people. It's remarkable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wish we got that same feel this year, but obviously, COVID kind of messed that
Hopefully we're
all
coming
up.
back, man.
That
If
was brutal.
everybody keeps doing what they're supposed to, hopefully
Yeah.
this fall we'll be right back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was at the Miami game this previous year or
That's a
this
good
past
one to
season,
be
and it
at.
was. I mean, there's only 20,000 people in there, but it
Right.
was crazy. It was so
No doubt.
like it's just it's amazing. It's amazing to be there. But later on in 2014, you were able to play about 60 snaps in the bowl game against Oklahoma, where you guys ended up winning 40-6. But what was it like being able to be a part of now a bowl game? Because regular season games they're important, but bowl games are also extremely important. So, how was that like playing in a neutral site and playing against Oklahoma?
Yeah, that game was a lot of fun. I remember we scored on the first play of the game. We do kind of a jet sweep, Artavis Scott, and he just houses it. And I think it was 60 or 70 yards. And we knew right then and there it was going to be a very long day for Oklahoma, and just really building up to that game. There was a lot of trash talking, a lot of excitement, and that was a fun bowl game. That was one of my favorite. Number one for playing so much and being able to dominate a team who historically is just fantastic in Oklahoma, but also just being in Orlando, going to the theme parks. They did a fantastic job of just keeping the teams interested and doing a lot of fun activities. So that bowl game in particular was actually a ton of fun.
Really, really cool. Is it like different to prepare for a bowl game than like a regular season game, or is it the same
Oh yeah.
preparation?
No, man, it's very different just because of time and the fact of number one, there's no school. Number two, the rules are different and how you can prepare and the amount of time you can spend as a team preparing for that. And that's actually something that was very instrumental, I believe, in Clemson's success that we're seeing right now. If you remember back 2011, our first BCS bowl game ever, we get absolutely crushed by West Virginia, 70-33. That whole week, we first of all, we were down there for 2 weeks and we practiced like it was preseason camp. I mean, we were killing each other. We were going so hard. We were running, conditioning, and you can't do that. And it sounds like I'm just complaining right now about playing football, but your body's beat up. You physically can't practice that way and expect to be able to go out in a game and perform at your highest level. So that was a huge learning piece for Coach Swinney and his staff, and they have. I mean, they've perfected it now. I mean, they've got the timing down. They've got the number of practices, when to hit, when to just be in shorts, when to condition. So it is a completely different process. And that was actually something that we learned too in 2015, going from a bowl game to then, oh, wait, you have one more game. You still have a national championship game. So it is very interesting how some of these losses have really been Clemson's greatest lessons in learning how to move forward.
Definitely. So yeah, speaking about the college football playoffs, that transition from going to playing against Oklahoma to Bama, that was a quick turnaround, and you obviously didn't necessarily have an idea of who the next game was going to be until it was played, so you can't prepare for it. But how different, how like weird was it just to like make it playing against the number 4 team in the nation to now, well, shoot, we have to prepare and go play against the number 2 team.
Yeah, well, we kind of had a little bit of an idea that it was going to be Alabama, just like they probably knew it was going to be us. But when you look at it, and it's a big turnaround. I mean, you're going from having like 25 days off and preparing for Oklahoma to now having 6 days off preparing for a national championship, and so it's obviously much more like a regular game week during the season. So that there wasn't too much different from a that standpoint in terms of, man, we've never done this before, but just the fact that it was that one more game was just different. Obviously, we handled it as business-like as we could, and just came up that short. But man, it was a fun game, and those 2 games. I mean, Oklahoma and Alabama. Honestly, I thought that those were the best games that I had played, just personally, and being able to really dominate up front. And man, it's a good way to kind of finish your career.
Yeah, for sure. But rewinding back to the start of 2015, you were named to the All ACC team, and this was, I guess the first time you were named to the preseason All ACC team. So, was this expectation heading into the year? Did it feel like added pressure, like, oh, I have to, make it there and fill this expectation, or was it just like, hey, it's an award, but let me forget about it and just keep doing what I'm doing?
Well, I'll tell you why there was no pressure is because I kind of talked my way into it. And I
Oh,
really, being at media day and just talking to so many people, I mean, if you look back at that list and if we're being honest with ourselves, there's no shot that I should have been on that team. I had one starting game. There was so many other guards, at least preseason, that just had more history and that should have probably received those votes. But at media day, which is where that voting happens, I'm not saying I stole the show, but I was talking to a ton of people, and a lot of people wanted to talk to me, and so I think that that's kind of why that happened. And so there wasn't really the pressure there, but it was in the back of my mind. It was like, all right, we're on a notice. We've kind of told everybody, here's what it is. Let's go prove it, and
yeah.
now let's get it at the end of the season. That's where it's really important. I kind of finagled my way into this. I kind of spoke my way into winning this in the preseason. Now let's go out on the field and prove it. And, that's what we were able to do, which, I'm very proud of.
Yeah. I mean, you talked the talk, but you were able to walk the walk, and you
That's
ended up
right.
making
That's
the
right.
first team. So, hey, there you go.
Exactly.
You did it. So, just in 2015, the year as a whole, I think personally, I think it's the most important year in Clemson football history.
Come on.
I
More
think it
people
could,
saying that.
yeah, I mean, hey, I think it is because although we we didn't end up winning the national championship, we lost to Bama 35-30. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the first time you guys made it to the national championship in 34 years since '81, and since then, like I mentioned again, they make it to the playoffs every year afterwards. So just how does it feel to be a part of such a big piece of history for Clemson football?
Yeah, I mean, that was the goal. That was the question you asked a couple of minutes ago about that Bleacher Report article of just saying why I wanted to do that. That was the reason. That was the goal that we had in mind. I hoped and thought that at some time in my career at Clemson, we could get to that moment. And we did. And we were able to get Clemson there, obviously coming up just a little bit short. There's no doubt in my mind that, if we had Mike Williams, if we had Deion Kane, available for that game, we win and we win back-to-back national championships. But unfortunately we didn't. Came up just a little bit short and just ran out of time. I mean, Alabama couldn't stop us. We couldn't stop them. And somebody had to win, and it ended with us not being able to get an onside kick to go ahead. And just a great game. That's one of the all-time classics. It's actually the highest scoring national championship game ever, which I didn't know that until a couple of weeks ago when someone from ESPN wrote that article. But obviously a great game and one that, even though Clemson lost, I hope Clemson fans remember for quite some time.
Definitely. So let's go to a better victory right now. But when you were able to play number 6 Notre Dame, and that was you ended up winning 24-22. They didn't convert on the 2-point conversion, and it was rainy day. There was apparently a hurricane coming in. It was crazy. But that game was one in the trenches. Clemson had over 200 yards rushing. But what was that entire game leading into it? Because you didn't know what was happening. Because I was reading an article about there was a hurricane. Clemson's like, we'll prepare for it. We'll be okay. But they didn't know if they were playing the game or not. And it was just
Right.
pouring rain, and obviously that stopped. But what were all the emotions, and what was it like being able to play in that game?
Man, it was incredible. Number one, that game was very personal to me. On my dad's whole side, I mentioned about the Tennessee side. On my dad's side of the family, which is from Indiana, it's a ton of Golden Domers. It's a ton of Notre Dame fans. And so really, if my dad had it his way, I would have been wearing that gold dome and playing for Notre Dame. So that one was something that I had circled on my calendar for quite some time. The excitement just building up to that game was incredible. I probably had 30 or 40 family members come to that game. So it was loaded up. We had a ton of people there watching. And then just all the excitement around it. I mean, game day was there, hurricane was there, all these crazy outside factors that had to do with the game that not even being played was incredible. And the emotions, like you said, just how personal I took it. And then just in the game, I mean, we get up 21-3 quick. And if it wasn't hurricaning, we would have beat them down because our offense was just flying all over the field. They couldn't keep up with us. And then all of a sudden, Clemson, we forget how to play football and we can't move the ball and we can't stop anybody and they come roaring back. Luckily we hit that field goal, go up 24 to, I think it was like 18. It was something weird, 24 to something. And then of course they score and our defense holds them. But that game was incredible. There were so many different moments of turnovers and momentum swings and just all these things. That game, I mean, it truly had everything that you would want from a college football game, from an instant classic. And the fans, I mean, there was a little bit of concern just in kind of rumblings that nobody was going to show up, that, people were going to obviously not want to be in the hurricane. They were going to want to be at their house, whatever. That was the craziest full game, not just a single moment, full game I have ever experienced in Death Valley. The rain almost intensified our fans and made everybody even crazier. So huge kudos, shout out to those guys because they made it easy for us to win that game.
Definitely. What was like the emotions and just the atmosphere like when that 2-point conversion wasn't converted?
It was just a release because again, I told you we like forgot how to play on offense. We're like, man, we're letting our guys down and we could have scored. I think we had the ball with maybe like 2 minutes to go, and all we had to do was get a first down, and we just couldn't. We couldn't move the ball. We give it back to them, and I'm like, man, I just hope these guys can do it, and they did. And sure enough, we just sprint on that field, tackling our guys and hugging, and just super excited we got the victory.
Yeah, and all the fans ran out too because at that time you could rush the field.
That's right.
I miss those. I miss those days of rushing the field.
No doubt.
But transitioning to, I guess, an award you got. So you are obviously a phenomenal football player, but you took your academics very seriously. And in 2014, you were named to the Academic Honor Roll. In 2015, you made the All-ACC Academic Team. So how are you able to balance school and athletics and really just show what it meant to be a student athlete?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's something that it's not easy to be a collegiate athlete, to still get good grades, to still have some type of social life. Sometimes you have to pick and choose, and more often than not, or hopefully more often than not, it's that social piece where we're just grinding and we're in film, we're in workouts, we're in practice, then we go to study hall, then we have to go take a test somewhere. So it was something that it used to be Vickery Hall. Now it's the Neary Center. So it used to be Vickery Hall. I mean, those, tutors and advisors and, just really the core team that Clemson football, kind of built around our football team there was tremendous. I truly felt like you had to almost try to fail and you had to try to not be successful just because there were so many people who were willing to help and to make sure you had the resources that you needed. So I tried to take a big time advantage of that and to really just, if I needed tutoring, if I needed, extra work, going to see your professors, all those different things. And, for it to pay off my senior year when I'm actually in grad school, so maybe even more difficult schooling, that was a lot of fun and really cool.
Definitely. What would your advice be to another, student athlete to be able to maintain and obviously be good at football, but focus on school?
Yeah, just take advantage of what's offered to you. I mean, there are so many resources for guys and girls that play sports in college, that have that athletic scholarship, and just use it to the fullest. I mean, don't be afraid, don't be nervous, don't be I'm going to look dumb if I have to have a tutor. It's not about that. It's about you making sure that you do and take care of yourself. And so I would really, really strongly encourage anybody listening to this that might be struggling in that area, just go get help. It's super easy.
Definitely. Now, this is more of a broad question, but how deep is the Clemson South Carolina rivalry truly? Like how deep was that for you?
You know what's interesting, and maybe this isn't the answer that you want here. So I told you I grew up a Tennessee fan.
Mm-hmm.
So Tennessee used to beat the crap out of South Carolina. And so when I got to Clemson, or when I was being recruited by Clemson and I heard that was their rival, I was like, what are y'all talking about? These guys are trash. Like, I'm not worried about the Gamecocks. And then, of course, early in my career, it's the best 5-year run of South Carolina
Yeah.
football ever. And we just can't figure out a way to beat these guys. So it's deep, man. It's something where the more fans that I meet, the more fans that I interacted with on both sides, they'd rather go 1-11 than 12 or 11-1 and lose to South Carolina or lose to Clemson. That's how strong it is. They want those bragging rights. They want to be able to say that we dominate, we own you. And right now, as it should be, that's those Clemson Tigers.
Well, I think it's gonna stay that way for a while. I don't know how South
That's
Carolina's
right.
getting out of it.
Only a pandemic can stop us from beating that.
Honestly, they got lucky there. They got lucky. Um, so coached by Dabo. He was a new coach when you came in, but how is he as a person and a coach? Like, what is he like?
He's a great man. And really, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that I felt like when I was getting recruited, that he cared about more of me becoming a good man, a better, potentially husband one day, father, a member of society, than a great football player. And he understood that if you take care of that aspect, if you take care of all the off the field stuff, the best football player is going to rise up, and he's going to emerge onto that field. And so that was something that was really important to me, and just how passionate he is, the fact that he centers his life around Christ, and that it's so evident. And he talks about it a lot, obviously, probably more than some people do. But even if he didn't, just how he goes about his life, how he acts, you can see it and you can tell. And that was something that was very important to me, and somebody that I want to be associated with. And so to see his growth as a person, as a coach, as a mentor, and really turned into, until Saban retires, the second best coach in all of college football. It's been truly amazing to see, and something that honestly I expected it to be at this level when I first met him.
Definitely. Was there like a specific moment where you realized that he cared more about you as a person than just a football player?
It just kind of happened. I mean, really, the first time that I ever met him, obviously he's a football coach, and he's going to talk about those different things, but he wanted to know about my family. He wanted to know about my mom and dad and my brother, who at the time was still in high school, and things that I was interested in outside of football. And I know there's an element, some other people from other fan bases might listen to this and roll their eyes, but it was just genuine, and it was sincere. And, I could tell that it was real.
Definitely. So transitioning over to, I guess we could say, analyzing the ACC. Clemson were losing, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and some other, great players like Jackson Carman. But how do you think Clemson will perform next season? I know it's a while away, and I know it doesn't start till August or September. But how do you think Clemson will perform, and how do you think they're going to do in their first game against Georgia in the neutral site stadium?
Yeah, well, I think expectations are going to be very high. I think Clemson's probably going to start off the season ranked number one. I'm not too sure who could be in front of them when we just have kind of proven talent coming back, an entire starting defense coming back. I think this is the first time in the college football era that a team has had 11 or 10, however you look at it, starters on one side of the ball coming back. So there's a lot of experience. And this season in itself should be very special. I think there's certainly anytime you lose a player to the caliber of Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, I don't want to understate either one of those guys, you're going to take a step back, right? But you also have a guy by the name of DJ Uiagalelei coming in, who, by the way, set the all-time passing record against one of the greatest teams in college football ever in Notre Dame, and seeing, a program that has faced a lot of great people and has played a football for a very long time, for him to come in as a freshman and to shatter that record, I think, just kind of shows you where he's going to be and where Clemson is going to go. I think it's also going to be interesting with Travis leaving. What does Clemson's offense look like? We saw them throw the ball more than ever before this year. I think that was a little bit of a blueprint of what we're going to see next year. And it's only going to help that there's a question mark at the running back position. Is it going to be Lynn J. Dixon? Yeah. Is it going to be Will Shipley, a freshman coming in? Is it going to be, Chaz Malusi? So it'll be very interesting to see who steps up to be running back one. but then also the fact that, I was talking to Amari Rogers the other day, and he said this is going to be a more talented wide receiver core, a deeper wide receiver core coming in this year. Justin Ross coming back, all these other guys getting healthy and growing up. So I truly think Clemson's offense might take another step forward, which is crazy to say that when they lose two of the best players ever in Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. You look at that Georgia game, it's going to be the best non-conference game in the entire season. It's right here in my backyard in Charlotte. Cannot wait to see that game. There's going to be a ton of hype, a ton of anticipation. Two quarterbacks from California battling it out for their respective teams. I think it's going to be a tremendous matchup.
Definitely. I think that JT Daniels for Georgia is I think he's a top two quarterback in college football definitely next season.
Absolutely.
But should be interesting to see what happens. And as you mentioned, with the receiving core for Clemson, they got Justin Ross hopefully coming back if he's able to, Joseph Ngata. But the guy that he's a freshman, he's going to be a true freshman in the recruiting class, is Beau Collins, and he played at the same high school as DJ. So do you think that connection could be very helpful for him, or what do you think could happen?
It should be, right? I mean, a guy that he played with for so many years over there and slinging the ball to all over the yard. It'll be interesting to see, can he get on the field? I mean, like I mentioned, there's so many great wide receivers. Does he have to wait his turn? The thing that Clemson does so well is they rotate guys. And if you have earned playing time, if you deserve playing time, they're going to find a way to get you on the field. But I mean, the wide receiver core, it is deep. I've talked to a couple of different people, and I've gone out on a limb and say this might be the best wide receiver room that Clemson has ever had. And it's nuts to say that when you think of Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, Sharon Peake, DeAndre Hopkins, all in this same class. And now I'm saying this one coming in is going to be better than that. It's really, I kind of feel weird saying it, but I truly think that the skill level, the talent is there for these guys. I mean, you look at Justin Ross and what he potentially is going to be able to do. It's going to be scary.
Yeah, definitely. I'll take your word for it. We'll see what happens.
That's right.
We'll let the field do the talking.
We'll chat in December and see if I was right or not.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any dark horses to possibly excel in the ACC?
One team that I think or two, I'll give you two that I really think are going to catch some people by surprise. Number one, Boston College.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that those guys, they're returning their entire offensive line. They're returning every skill player outside of Hunter Long, who's a fantastic tight end. But they have Phil Dracovic, which we saw him up close and personal, Clemson fans at our house, just dominate for a half. And then Clemson obviously woke up and played really well. But he is going to be a top 10 draft prospect when he leaves. 6'5", 240 pounds. You can't teach that. And he has a rocket launcher of an arm.
Definitely.
I'm very excited to see Boston College. Coach Hafley there has done a great job and really developing that defense, which has probably been a little bit lackluster for Boston College in years past. So when you see that, I think they're going to be a team people should kind of, circle. Don't let them sneak up on you. And then the last one is Pitt. They have 13 super seniors, guys who are fourth or fifth year who decided to come back for another go-round, led by their quarterback, Kenny Pickett. They're going to be fun to watch on offense. Defense, they're losing a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe potentially
Their
three.
defensive line.
Defensive lines, secondary. I mean, they're going to be pretty depleted, but it's what Pitt does. They reload on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe not to the same extent, or at least right away that Clemson does, but those guys are going to have some ball players. So those are two teams that I'm really focused on and think if you're not careful, they can sneak up on you.
Definitely. And with Boston College too, they have Zay Flowers, our receiver, who seems to be he's phenomenal.
What's funny
incredible.
Is his freshman year, which is I guess 2 years ago now, the way that they used him with jet sweeps, with go routes, with quick over the middle routes, I said this guy really, really reminds me of Percy Harvin from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said that, everybody's like, man, you are nuts. But when you look at him now and you look at his numbers, it aligns very closely with what Percy Harvin did at Florida. So it'll be interesting to see his junior year. Does he have another kind of breakout superstar season, or do people start really double teaming him and trying to lock him down?
We'll see. He does have speed though, which is ideal. It's hard to stop. You can't teach speed. So That's going to be a great piece for him. And do you think that North Carolina and Sam Howell will be, I guess, Clemson's biggest competition in the ACC? And how do you think they're going to perform out there?
Yeah, there's no question. They're my favorite to win the Coastal. I think they're going to be playing the Tigers here in Charlotte in December for the ACC championship. I think Sam Howell is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think he's going to be a very high draft pick when he decides to leave. And he has all the tools. I mean, he is a tremendous quarterback. Can throw it, can run it, can make all the reads that you want to see. The biggest question from them is obviously they're losing so much production from their wide receiver core and two great running backs that we'll see. I mean, again, they're going to reload and they have some really fun young talent that we'll just kind of see. We might not know their names at the beginning of the year, but by the season's end, we're going to really figure out who they are. And similar to Clemson, we might see North Carolina throw the ball a lot more.
And so my last question would be, so with Deshaun Watson, right, he said he wants out from Houston. That's his own opinion, but where do you think he should go? Like, if you could pick the perfect team that would be able to have the pieces to trade for him, where do you think the best area would be for him?
Yeah, I'd love to see him in Miami. I think that they have the capital. I think they have the draft picks to get him, obviously, and trade Tua. And just to see him out of Houston, man. I obviously was a big Houston fan for a while there when they had so many different Tigers, but just to see the fact that all those guys have left and now Deshaun is trying to leave, it just has to make you think that it's not a franchise you want to be a part of. And there's stuff that goes on there that, people don't appreciate, they don't like, and that's why they're leaving. And so I think it's fantastic what he's doing. I think that, we're seeing a power shift to the players, which I think should happen. And it'll be interesting to see. But if he doesn't end up in Miami, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders would be fantastic to see him get out there. A little 4-13 action would be a lot of fun to see at the NFL level.
No, I would love to see with John Gruden. I would love that. I saw the little rumors apparently coming out where they could trade Derek Carr.
Right.
And I was like,
let's make it happen.
That'd be great. I love Derek Carr. I think he does not get respect, but man, I'd like to see Deshaun there.
I like Deshaun more, so I'd like to see him out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so before I let you go, you are obviously working for the ACC Network, and that opportunity, you weren't like seeking out to work for ESPN, but when you got that call and they were asking you to come be a part of this network, like what was going through your mind when this happened?
Yeah, it was really something that was a little bit blindsiding. And like you mentioned, I was not really interested in wanting to pursue working in broadcasting on my own. It was something that being a player, and I told you guys about ACC Media Day and the success that I had there and really kind of being, the face and the voice for Clemson my last 2 years there. Everybody just saying, go work for ESPN. You need to do this. You're great, whatever. And I enjoyed it as a hobby. I enjoyed it doing it for fun. I didn't want it to be, my quote unquote job. So my wife and I, Khaki, were very happy in Greenville, South Carolina, working for a sponsorship sales company and working in marketing. And, this kind of came out of nowhere. And it's just interesting when, we have our plan and God has his plan and, just kind of laughs at us that we think we know what's best for us. And man, I'm just so blessed and so excited that he put that on my path. And, for us to be doing this, the relationships that I've been able to build, the people that I've been able to meet, and then just being back in the game. I mean, it's obviously not the same as being a coach or a player, but we're still right in it. I'm watching more film than ever right now because I'm having to watch 14 teams. And when they're playing out of conference, 30 plus teams or 28 teams for a week. So I'm watching so much film. I'm a part of the game that I love. And it's really been a fun time and something that I'm so glad that, as soon as it happened, I didn't just shut it down and say, no, I'm good, because it's truly been a bunch of fun.